So Nintendo has decided to do something with the Switch 2 that I never really thought would happen. So we all know the Wii U was a huge failure, and of course Nintendo used that to their success with the Nintendo Switch. All the great games that they released on the Wii U is now on Switch. Kind of. For some reason with the Switch 2, they're doing the same exact thing with the highly successful Nintendo Switch 1 in its library, where they're giving us tons of Switch 1 games again, for some reason. Let me introduce you to the Nintendo Switch 2 editions. This was something that was an immediate turn-off for me when the Switch 2 was actually revealed. I was excited to see all these next-gen games and stuff, and Nintendo spent like the first 10 minutes of the presentation just talking about tons of old games that we already got, getting these Switch 2 editions, and I was immediately like, ugh, no. One of my biggest and only complaints with Switch 1 was just how many ports we got of the Wii U. As a Wii U owner who literally had every single first-party Nintendo game, kinda sucked when every other month it felt like the big game of the month was a Wii U game that I've already played. But thankfully this wouldn't be a big issue, at least for the first entire year of Switch 1, because we only had one Wii U port, which was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which they actually bumped up and added some cool things like a new battle mode, tons of new characters, and then eventually tons of additional content through DLC. And the rest of the year was filled with major games like Super Mario Odyssey, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Splatoon 2, ARMS, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and tons of other games as well. So to see the very first presentation for Switch 2 focus on Switch 1 games was a huge letdown for me. I mean, even the upcoming Switch 2 games such as Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Pokemon Legends ZA both were Switch 2 editions technically, which were better versions of what was made to be a Switch 1 game. Once I saw this and saw that Nintendo was charging up to $20 for a Switch 2 edition, I started to really get worried. Especially when one of those was a third Mario Party game for the Switch 1 that came out under a year ago. Now I know for a lot of people, Super Mario Party Jamboree was a really good Mario Party for them, and I will admit, it is the closest we've gotten to the original formula, and it does some things really, really well. In fact, to me, the boards are a highlight in this game, but it's the mini games that really let me down. I feel like the mini games are very small in between, very repetitive, and just not as fun as past games, so I wasn't that huge on Super Mario Party Jamboree in the first place, and to see that Nintendo, instead of making a new one for Switch 2, was just going to recycle the same one and charge $20 extra for some stupid gimmicky side modes, which the game was already known for having. So for this to be the first Switch 2 edition, it got it off on a really bad start, and I think a lot of people, including myself, was really let down by this one. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom got updates that were priced at $10, which I think actually isn't terrible, because it made the game run so much better. It actually moves a lot smoother, there's not really any frame hiccups, and it really shows the power of the Switch 2 and makes these games the best possible versions that they can be. That's awesome, and it's only $10 in order for us to have that. And the reason why it doesn't bother me so much with Zelda is because we just got Tears of the Kingdom, so we know it's going to be a very long time until we see the next mainline 3D Zelda game, so this makes absolute perfect sense for a year one Switch 2 thing. I mean, this is something that easily you could just pick up and play as soon as the Switch 2 came out, and it was only $10 for the upgrade because most people probably already own these games. So believe it or not, I feel like these two games were the best value of the Switch 2 editions yet, and I think a lot of people wanted to see this more, taking older games from the Switch 1 and making them run better by charging maybe $5 or $10 extra for that 60 frames per second and that better look. I am a huge Kirby and the Forgotten Land fan, and as successful as it was, I think it needed to be even more successful. It is a brilliant 3D platformer and one of my favorites on Nintendo Switch 1, but with that said, they decided to add more random content to the game, and I admit, the content was still fun and expanded the game a little bit, but nothing more than a couple of hours, and to pay $20 for just more Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I mean, it depends on who you are. I mean, sure, a lot of people could say, yeah, that's great, but it didn't really offer anything super special. The levels never really got too difficult, and besides the ending with a kind of similar boss battle, it didn't really do too much different. And all the levels were pretty well designed, but they were just extensions of previously already existing levels, so it was just a quick way to add more Kirby content, and it's hard to complain with HAL Labs and how much they've been cooking with Kirby lately. I mean, it seems like we're getting some Kirby greatness every 5 to 6 months now, which is just awesome. But personally, I think just adding a free performance boost mode or something would have been well more than enough. Well, today, Nintendo just dropped yet again another Switch 2 edition randomly online, Paulygon, which is Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 Edition. Now, it's only $5, and it adds some quality of life changes, fixes the textures. The game isn't in 60 frames for some reason, though, which is very strange. But yeah, just some little added things for the game. But this is where I'm starting to get really confused. This isn't a Zelda situation where it's been a year since the last game and it just makes sense. Animal Crossing New Horizons came out at the beginning of 2020, which means we were about 5.5 years since Animal Crossing New Horizons came out. So I'm like, are they just saying that it's still going to be a very long time until we see the next Animal Crossing? Because not only is there a paid Switch 2 edition, but there's a free update for Switch 1 users, adding some more content to the point where I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Because this is now releasing at the beginning of January next year, which tells me that we're not getting a new Animal Crossing next year whatsoever. And it might be still 2 to 3 years away. Nintendo's also doing this with these little free updates as well. Like Pikmin 4 just got a random free update, which was just weird. The game came out in 2023, and for some reason, they now decided to add like a photo mode and some like little collectible costumes for your Pikmin when 90% of the fan base has already completed and played this game years ago. I feel like we nod our heads and smile and say, oh, this is a cute little addition and upgrade and stuff, but not realizing what it means. And once again, like I said, getting the port of Mario Kart 8 again the first year of Switch wasn't bad because we were surrounded by tons of new exclusive titles. That's not necessarily the case here. We are just about 5 months into this brand new console, and we only have 2 Nintendo Switch 2 exclusives with Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, and personally I think only one of those is a stellar title. That's Donkey Kong. Pokemon Legends ZA just came out, and that's a Switch 2 edition as well technically, and Metroid Prime 4 coming out is also a Switch 2 edition. So that leaves only 2 more Switch 2 exclusives for the rest of the year, which are 2 spin-offs. A spin-off of Zelda being the third Hyrule Warriors on the platforms of Switch, and a spin-off of Kirby being Kirby Air Riders, the second one. And I'm not gonna lie, Kirby Air Riders is looking absolutely phenomenal, so I'm not even gonna give that one a hard time at all. But what I'm noticing is instead of these Switch 2 editions being games that fill gaps until the next big game a couple months later, they feel like just games that are coming out. You know what I mean? They're like almost being treated as major games and advertised as such as well. I mean, let's just look at what Nintendo's slate is so far for next year. I mean, they've already announced a Switch 2 edition with Mario Wonder, and now we have a new Switch 2 edition with Animal Crossing New Horizons. Was there a big major title to look forward to in between those? Not really. I mean, you got another Mario Tennis game and a 2D Yoshi game. Plus, the only other games we know of are Switch 1 games with Rhythm Heaven Groove and the new Tomodachi Life. So yeah, what's left? That gives you nothing but Fire Emblem. And that is honestly the only next big title that we know about, which, you know, is already a kind of niche franchise for the most part. I feel like what people really want is just to play their Switch 1 games, but in the best possible ways. I can see so many people online every day saying, where is Paper Mario the Thousand Year Doors, 60 frames per second update? And we still haven't even heard anything about that. I mean, people are willing to pay an extra $5 for something like that, up to maybe even $10 just to have a better running Paper Mario. We don't need all that extra content and stuff because that's just going to take away from development time for the next major game. I think a perfect example of this is Bowser's Fury, which was originally kind of a Switch 2 edition, but for the Wii U. It was a Switch 1 edition, technically. It gave you Mario 3D World with a couple slight changes in Mario's movement and stuff, but it added this additional game called Bowser's Fury, which was a very short little extra gameplay chunk, which technically they didn't even have to charge an extra $20 or anything for. But if Mario 3D World originally came out on the Switch 1 and then they added Bowser's Fury for the Switch 2, they would have charged us $20, which, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Bowser's Fury came out at the very beginning of 2021. It's now the end of 2025 and we don't even have a clue what the next 3D Mario is going to be. That's my point. That means technically, going off of that logic, it can be up to an additional 4 years until we see another game in that series because they added content to an already existing game. Or if it's another 4 years until we see another 2D Mario game. I know Pikmin 4 only came out about 2 years ago, but what if this free update means like we're still like in very, very early development for the next Pikmin game? What if this is telling us that the new Animal Crossing for Switch 2 is still another 3 to 4 years away? And that's the exact reason why I feel like these are silent killers. Why do you think they're giving us Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild updates right now, because we're still probably at least another 4 to 5 years away until the next mainline 3D Zelda game. And these little updates and Switch 2 editions are just pouring out. Like every month there's a new one announced. It's getting to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, what is next? I mean, I made this video just a little bit after that Switch 2 Direct, and I've been pretty accurate so far. And as I look at the rest of these, I'm like, as it would be cool to get more content, it's actually terrifying. Because can you imagine if they announced a Smash Ultimate Fighters Pass 3 where everybody's like, cool, more fighters, but that also means another 4 years until the next mainline Smash Brothers game. Or after all this time, something like Luigi's Mansion 3, Mario Maker 2, or even Super Mario Odyssey gets a Switch 2 edition that just adds more content, and we're still waiting for the next mainline game. I don't think that would ever happen with Mario, because it's just been 8 years so far, so like another 4 years would sound like torture. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I want to say that, but I see a lot of people complaining about these Switch 2 editions online and how they feel like half-baked for what they are and that they're overcharging, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense for some of these additions and updates. So yeah, I mean, I literally know it's not just me, but let me know how you feel about this. Personally, I just like to see new games. I'm not a fan of constantly revisiting old games unless it's some type of, you know, huge remade form that's almost unidentifiable from the original. Something like Final Fantasy VII's remake, where it just feels like a completely new game. But when you're just porting over games, especially from the generation before, which were already massively successful and lots of those games already looked great, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I never thought in a million years that the Switch 2 would be doing what the Switch 1 did with Wii U games, but now with Switch 1 games, it's just strange to me. But shoot, outside of the free updates and Switch 2 editions, Nintendo's still finding ways to give us old games with like the GameCube classics, which is great though. I love getting GameCube games, especially, you know, as part of the Nintendo Switch Online subscription fee, considering the fact that right now half of those GameCube games are going for like over $100 online from all these game stores and stuff. So GameCube games are fine, even though we're only getting like one every 4 months, it seems like. But also we're getting games like Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, which are the exact same games from the Wii. So yeah, I don't know. So far for Switch 2, it just feels like I've been playing more classic games than I've been playing new games, you know? It also makes me think that maybe just the Switch 2 wasn't ready yet and Nintendo forced it to be. Like, it was already rumored that the Switch 2 was already delayed as much as it was. I don't know what is taking it so long. But yeah, it seems like the games were undergoing some issues, because there was all these rumors that the Switch 2 was supposed to be revealed and come out sooner, and it never happened. Plus the two games that we do have right now with Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World, we know both of those started off as Switch 1 games. So yeah, it just feels like it wasn't ready to come out yet. Because I feel like at this point, we may not be seeing the huge titles until the end of the second year or around the third and fourth years for Switch 2, which is a pretty long time and an investment of money to buy into the Switch 2 without getting those big titles until 3 to 4 years later. So I don't know, we'll see. Let me know what you guys think down below, and like always, have a blessed day, and I'll see you all in the next one. See you guys.